This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. I'm going to talk through my 2021 and some reflections about my business and some things outside of business that feel somewhat related. I know some of you love this kind of stuff, of getting to hear behind the scenes from entrepreneurs about what they're thinking, how they're making their decisions, what kind of pivots they're making. And some of you, maybe not so much. No hard feelings either way. I am going to be delving in right now, and this is going to be more of a real me dive today. And really not so much me teaching. So if this is your thing, welcome. If this is not your thing, no hard feelings. I will see you next time with an interview. Okay, so I'm going to just, in no particular order, I'm going to walk through some reflections. Things that happened, the meaning I'm making of them, what I'm learning. One big thing that changed in 2021, one big thing that happened is I made more money. I made a lot more money. And this was fantastic. And one thing I noticed in making more money is that I can trust myself with money. So one thing that happened partway along the way this year as I was bringing in more money is I mentioned to my friend BK, hey, I'm having expense creep. And we get together and talk about our money every month. And we have other kinds of conversations too, but once a month we talk about our money. And she said, I don't know if I like this expense creep description that you're giving, because it sounds like you're spending and investing in really conscious and thoughtful ways. And I realized that is really true. I am in a position to be more generous, and I'm also in a position to make different decisions around my money, and I'm making really good decisions. And I say this because I know that in our capitalist system, which is really idealizing the concentration of wealth to a small number of people, I think we don't have a great model for looking at if you are running a micro business and you're making more money, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to handle that? And to really step into something that I've heard Kelly Diels talk about, that you are trustworthy with more money and you're not using Jeff Bezos as your role model. You're looking at how you're going to spend more money as it comes in really thoughtful ways. And I've had really great conversations with people in my programs about this year. When folks are feeling some tightness or fear about making more money, looking at, all right, when you make more money, how are you investing it or saving it or sharing it or spending it? And then observing yourself can actually build your trust in yourself to be a great recipient of more money. All right. And this is also helping me get very comfortable with being the main breadwinner in my home. And I heard this story this year and I got judgmental. I heard a story about somebody who makes a really good income and then that person wanted their partner also to make more money so that they were both making more money. And I got judgmental and said, well, why? Like, if you're making a really great amount of money, doesn't that mean you don't need to put pressure on your partner to make money? And then I looked at myself and thought, all right, I could work on that too. So I have talked a lot about being the breadwinner, and this is a growing edge for me to be really embracing and actually loving it. In terms of making more money, I also want to mention Rachel Rodgers and her book, We Should All Be Millionaires. And I know she's been a big influence for me and for a lot of entrepreneurs in terms of embracing making more money. Women making more money, progressive folks making more money, BIPOC folks making more money, queer folks, folks from all sorts of marginalized identities making more money, and particularly ethical micro business owners making more money. I'm going to get more into hiring later on, but that piece is very connected, because if we should all be millionaires, then we need to absolutely be setting up our businesses where we're not oppressing other people as we're running our businesses. So we'll get there in a minute. But I'm going to move on to raising my prices over 2021. So I realized that my prices needed to go up, and they did. And this was so that I could keep on serving at the very highest level in my programs. And I like running small programs where I get to give everybody attention and a lot of support, a lot of curriculum, but also a lot of me. And part of that picture means that those aren't going to be cheap programs. And there's also a story to a price. I've gotten a lot of help from Jacquette Timmons with pricing. I've also been influenced by my friend Tiffany McLain around pricing. And the narrative idea, I know that Jacquette talks about this, that if your pricing is telling a story that doesn't make sense, it is going to feel misaligned to people. The purpose of my program is to help people create their own programs where they're going to make a good living at this. And so they are easily going to more than 10x their investment in doing my program. And so if I charge a small amount for my program, first of all, that's going to leave me super burned out. Second of all, it doesn't make sense. It's not a story that makes sense. Like, you can invest a small amount in this program and you're going to get a ton of support, and you're going to turn around and be able to create a business that brings you a lot of income. That doesn't make sense, and it doesn't actually work. So I have raised my prices over 2021. And as as you're listening to this, I don't know what year it will be, but as I am recording this, the price for Create Your Program is $3,000. And that has just gone up over the years, and definitely went up a lot in 2021. And I have not noticed an issue in terms of people no longer signing up as the price has gone up. That has not been true at all. So wonderful people continue to sign up and to be really invested in their own success. So I know that this is a complex issue. This is a nuanced issue. So it's going to be different for each person. And like I said, I'm not teaching today. I'm reflecting, and then knowing that you're going to grab things from this and apply them to you. And I also just know this is a nuanced issue, and it is going to piss some people off to hear about me raising my prices, and that, perhaps my services have gotten less affordable for folks. And I get that. And what I don't think works is for us to martyr ourselves, charge less than we actually need to charge to keep our services amazing. I don't think that works. What I do think can work, what's working for me, is to have some things accessible at a very low price or at no price. And I actually go for the no price model, where I've got my podcast that's available, and I have events that are available. I have a mini course that's available. I like creating free stuff. And then my programs are not free and are not cheap. So that is the route that I have really been embracing. That's been working well for me. I'm going to name another influence in this, and that is Claire Pelletreau and her podcast, the Get Paid podcast, where she has conversations with entrepreneurs and they talk about pricing. And actually, all three of these people I've just mentioned around pricing have podcasts. So Claire's is the Get Paid podcast. Tiffany McLain has the Money Sessions, and that's particularly for therapists. And Jacquette Timmons has More Than Money, and that is really for everyone around money. So check those out. All right, another reflection piece is that I have not been a therapist this entire year. I stopped being a therapist in the spring of 2020 so that I could run just one business. And of course, I miss my clients and absolutely love them and care about them. And in terms of the role of therapist, though, it's going really well for me to just have one business. And I can see really clearly how much, because now I coach therapists, but I am not a therapist, I can really see clearly how much we as therapists tend to get in our own way and slow ourselves down. I'm noticing that with a lot of clarity now that I'm not a therapist. Things like getting very stuck around, how do I move forward with my business when I have a therapy license? And I love helping with people with that. I love bringing in guest teachers who are attorneys to help people think through that. And I know there's also just a huge mindset piece there for therapists. So for me personally, it has gone really well having just one business. And I know for some folks, it works really well to have two, and to be a therapist, to also have something beyond private practice. And yeah, I have noticed a lot of therapists, and it may be confirmation bias to some degree because of what I do for a living, but I do hear from a lot of therapists that they're burning out on being therapists. All right, another reflection, another thing that has changed in 2021 is I've been adding more things to my programs. So I have two programs. One is Create Your Program, and the other one is a mastermind for people who have already been through Create Your Program and they want more support. All right, so to Create Your Program, I added a session with Layla Pomper. She's a systems expert. So she helps people to choose and organize their business flow in terms of systems and tech. And that's been amazing having her come. And I thought I was good at systems, but Layla has been so helpful. And I learn a lot from her every time she comes and teaches my groups. And then one other thing I added was having guest teachers come in who are attorneys. And so I've had Elizabeth Potts Weinstein come in and talk about the legal side of business and answer questions, and also Brandy Matthews. So these are two attorneys who have come into my programs and answered all the questions that my participants have. And it's just so comforting for participants to get to hear their perspective. They don't always have the tailored, perfect answer for every question, but they can help folks get oriented to how to find the right answer and what the right questions are to be asking. So I never thought I was good at legal advice. So I am so delighted to be able to have them helping out. I'm also adding Introvert office hours. And so that means that this is actually inspired by Paula Pant. She's got that in her program. That's for people who are buying a rental property. Completely different niche, obviously, but she has Introvert office hours, and I have borrowed that idea. So this means that people can submit any question at any time, and then I go in and answer all of those questions at once in a recording, so that people who don't like to ask questions in even a small group get their questions answered. I also added some extra Q&A calls for people who do want to ask out loud in the group and hear each other's questions. So just lots of opportunities for people to get their questions answered in different ways. And that has worked really well. In the mastermind, which is the follow-up program, I added virtual retreats. So I have a virtual retreat that's around creating content, creating remarkable content. And over 2 days, we got together and started actually creating content and also creating content calendars so that folks were getting clear on what are they going to write about in their emails over the next 6 months? What articles are they going to write? What podcast episodes are they going to create? Really looking at the high quality, remarkable, notable content that they want to create. And people got to work and loved it. And I also added a session with Layla Pomper in that mastermind so that people with kind of next level systems questions can get her brain on their systems. And in Create Your Program, which is the first program that people do with me, I've added a bunch of frequently asked questions. So sometimes the same questions come up over and over again. So now I have places throughout the experience where you get to hear, all right, here are some questions a lot of people have when they get to this point in the program, and here are my nuanced answers to those questions. And I'm always adding to these programs. If you run a program beyond private practice, I'm sure you are also constantly improving and observing what's working and adding more. And as I say that, adding more, I also always want to be really careful not to add too much, to keep things simple, to keep things pared down. All right, the next thing, I'm going to talk about something that is a few things actually that are not directly related to my business. The first is the Free Joy experience. So I became a participant. I went through that program, the Free Joy experience, in 2020. This was created by Thea Monnier and Ebony Janice Moore. This is a program that focuses on racial healing and liberation using ancestral accountability and expanding white consciousness and imagination. So this is something you should absolutely check out. The Free Joy experience that was created by Thea Monnier and Ebony Janice Moore. And now I'm still involved in that and just find it incredible. Another project I'm involved in is listening to adoptees. So this is a podcast that I co-create with my co-host, Caitlin. We move really slowly through this project because we both also have full-time jobs and other stuff going on, but it's something that is really meaningful to us. And we interview adult adoptees about their experiences. And one reason we do that is so that adoptive parents like me can do better. I sent my oldest kid off to college this year, and that's really something. So I realize he's editing this podcast, so zero guilt trip here, but it's really something to release your adult child into the world. And I'm so proud of him and amazed by him. And also, it is a painful experience to let go. It's like that painful, joyful experience that I wish we had a better word for in the English language. Or if we do, tell me about it. Because it's a combination of grief, but also joy and love. And it's a really good thing. But that was a huge, huge transition this year. And as you're listening to this, he's home visiting. So that's awesome. Another big thing that happened this year, which I don't have much to report about yet, is that I bought a rental property in Michigan as a long-term investment. And I did that with the help of Paula Pant's course, Your First Rental Property, which I recommend if that's something that you want to do. And I will share more about this once I know more about it. We're just in the very early stages. All right, I'm breaking in to interrupt myself because I want to tell you about Create Your Program. You heard me talking about it, or you will hear me talking about it in this episode, but I didn't tell you specifically what it is. So Create Your Program is a small group experience to help you create your program or reiterate your program beyond private practice. It has a ton of support. Some of that you're hearing about in this episode. I love this program and I would love to have you in it. So go over to rebeltherapist.me/create to read all about it and then register. All right, let's get back to whatever else I was saying. Another kind of less concrete thing that changed this year, but very important, is I've stepped more and more into coaching people on how to make decisions rather than telling them what to do. So I have been looking to find a sweet spot between being efficient. So sometimes I can help people spot something that might be like a really bad idea, something that might waste a lot of time. I can often help people avoid that. And I think the best coaching is not about giving advice and not about giving quick answers, but is about thinking about how to think and looking at different options and why one option versus another option might be the way that one would want to go. And so I've really slowed down in answering questions to look at, let's make sure this is even the right question for you. And let's think about how to think about this instead of just, this is the thing to do. Like, it should be Instagram instead of LinkedIn, for example. We want to look at why, what's the problem we're solving, and slow it down. So this is something I've been working on a lot this year. I'm going to keep working on. A more concrete thing from 2021 is I was on a lot of podcasts. I was a guest on a ton of podcasts, and it was fantastic. It really helped me to get the word out about Rebel Therapist to more people and to get to know all these hosts of these podcasts. And I'm probably scaling that back a little bit in 2022, only because I need to decide on the best use of my energy every year. And so if I'm spending time on one thing, it means I'm spending less time on something else. And so I'm probably going to scale back just a little bit, or maybe a lot of bit on being a guest on podcasts. I'll keep you posted on that. Or maybe you'll hear about it at the end of 2022. Okay, hiring. This is a big one. And I waited a long time to do this. I had been working with an amazing person as a contractor who was a program coordinator, very part-time, and really running her own business and was working as a contractor with Rebel Therapist. But then, she left for other pastures, and I waited quite a while to hire someone as an employee. So Tara McLain was one person who really helped me think this through in identifying what role was I looking for help with and what particular skills. And I think she used the word unicorn first, and then I kind of glommed onto it and kept using the word unicorn for this person, of like finding somebody who has just the particular skills and likes doing the kinds of things that I really needed help with. And I got very clear that I was looking for an employee, a real team member, not just a contractor. I then got a lot of help and inspiration from Podge Thomas, who you just met in my last episode. And she has this great offer about writing a job description. You should go grab that now at smallbusinesscopilot.com. I also got help again from Tara McLain and also from Thea Monnier. I interviewed both of them in 2021 about building their teams. And Tara talked about being an introverted boss, and Thea Monnier talked about building a decolonized and joy-centered team. And I've returned to those episodes a bunch of times. And I'm just so lucky that when I want to learn about something that has to do with business, I get to interview really amazing people about what has worked for them. And then I get to share it with you. So it's not just for me. And so if you aren't already, you should be subscribed to both of their podcasts. So Tara has the What Works podcast, and Thea Monnier has Shaping the Shift. And I'm not going to talk about the person I hired yet because I don't think it's fair to them because they're still onboarding. But this is very exciting, and it's a wonderful person. All right. The next thing, this is very related to hiring, is that my hours crept up. So this made me feel weird because in many moments I had talked to you, to guests on other podcasts, I talked about how I work 20 hours a week. And I talked about that a lot in 2020. And that like I would tend to work 20 hours, and maybe in a really busy week, I would work 25 hours. And when I say work, I mean being very specifically in my Rebel Therapist business. And then as you know, there are other things that can be considered work. But in my business, 20, maybe 25 hours a week. And then it crept up. And it crept up this year to 30 hours, and then sometimes 38 hours. And I want to say I use Toggle, the app Toggle, to track my time. And I only count the hours when I'm actually working. So I don't count any breaks. I don't count anything but like straight up work. So that's what I mean when I say 38 hours. It's like really 38 hours. This is still a really small work week for some people. I get that. This is, I'm in a really privileged position to be able to work a relatively small number, but I want to work 20 hours, maybe 25. And I want you to also if you want to. And so as my hours crept up, it became clear that it was really time to hire someone. To be able to still serve at the highest level, I would need to hire someone. And now I have. And so my hours will creep back down. And next year, I am hoping I'll be reporting that I'm back down to less hours. I also want to bookmark that because I think it's important that I don't give into the narrative that the more hours you work, the more money you make, because that's not really what this is about. And it's too easy to fall into that. The podcast has changed. So now Rebel Therapist podcast has changed many times. I'm sure it will continue to, as many podcasts do. So now you may have noticed every other episode is a solo episode. And that's one way for me to step into a bit more intimacy with you, really, and a little bit more of my own ideas being part of this podcast, not just in conversation with other people, but me really thinking through and then sharing with you how I think about business. And then because I have so few guests now, I'm just even more careful than ever that I'm inviting guests who can teach you things that you need to learn, and teaching it not from necessarily an expert point of view, but teaching it from a point of view of here's what I've tried, here's what's worked. And I loved having the hiring series that I mentioned where I talked to Thea Monnier, I talked to Tara McLain about hiring and building a team. I loved this other series that I did, which was about how to get corporate gigs and organizational gigs. And those were both things that I hadn't done, at least not anywhere near at the level that these guests had done them. So it was wonderful to get to learn from them and have you learn from them. And another example of that is the next guest is going to be Jeff Gunther talking about TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I don't know if I want to be, but I think some of you should be. So it's really cool that you get to learn from Jeff about how he's done that. So that'll be coming out in a couple weeks. Okay, another thing is, this is a reflection on 2021, is that I'm going to be 50. So as this is coming out, I'll be 50 in 2 days. And I don't know what that means, except I have noticed I'm often the oldest person in many online spaces where I am with other entrepreneurs. And I have some internalized ageism where I get worried about becoming irrelevant because I learned so much from younger people in this particular space. Like there's other spaces where I learn from older people, but in the online entrepreneur space, I tend to learn a lot from younger people. Probably everybody I've mentioned today is younger than me. Maybe not. And yet I think that's internalized, like I said, I think that's internalized ageism that I'm saying I could become irrelevant. I don't believe that about other people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. So this is a growing edge for me to not give into ageism, to not take it as a compliment when someone thinks I'm younger than 50, not take it as an insult if someone guesses that I'm older than 50, like I'm 50. And that's awesome. And it'll be awesome to get older. And I'm going to take people like Frances McDormand as kind of my aging role models, like people who are just so comfortable with themselves. So that's what I want to be. And what I'm looking at now, I feel like I should say something even better about turning 50. Like it's fucking great. It's exciting. I'm not, people have asked me a lot, like, what are you doing? And the main thing I'm doing is some internal just reflection and not anything outwardly big. All right, here's what I'm looking forward to, what I'm looking at in 2022. I want to get the team of Rebel Therapists solid and nurtured and clear on our path together. And so it's not a year about adding a lot of stuff. It's really a year of consolidating and getting a foundation, an even stronger foundation under us. I feel like there are some years that are about expanding, and there's some years about staying the path. And this is more a year of staying the path. And I want to, some intentions that I have, I want to feature our participants more. In the episode on niching, I just, like, it was practically an afterthought. I just asked some folks in my mastermind programs, like, any of you be okay with me talking about your work? And then a bunch of people wrote back. I didn't even end up getting to feature all of them because then I recorded the episode so quickly. And then I got feedback from listeners, from some of you saying you want to hear more. Like, you loved getting to hear about the work they're doing. You want to hear more about them and you want to hear from more of them. So I definitely want to feature Rebel Therapist participants more. And I want to dig in and write and create more. And I also want to be more clear about, part of that will be being more clear about the stances that we take, like what we believe in, what we don't believe in. And I've had a lot of times this year where I've heard someone else, some other wonderful entrepreneur say something, and I'll think, well, I've been saying that behind the scenes in my own head, maybe to my clients, maybe to my spouse and friends, but I haven't said it outwardly. And I want to be doing more of that. I want to be talking more about how I think about business and how I think about business in some ways that might be considered radical. I want to spend more time with other progressive entrepreneurs who are also at the multiple six-figure of revenue mark and who are also committed to running their businesses in a way that contributes to liberation. So that's something I'll be doing more of. And I'm really introverted. So in order to do that, it means doing less of something else. And so as I tell you what I'm thinking about doing, I'm very conscious that it means anything I pick means something else has to come off my plate. I'm committed to making more revenue in 2022 than we did in 2021. And I'm going to tell you why, because someone might wonder, but you just said you're making plenty of money and things are going so well. So why more? So a lot of it is so that I can show you how. It is fun. And also because I want to help more therapists and healers make money beyond private practice. And the more I'm able to do that, the more I'm able to show you how to do that. And as I say that, I know I'm going to get pushback from some of you, and that's totally okay too. I am going to really work on getting my own healing more regularly. I, like many of you, fell into not getting my own healing during the pandemic. I know we're still in it, but earlier parts of the pandemic. So things like body work, I was just like, we'll just not do that because too hard. So in 2022, I commit to really getting my own healing more regularly. I also commit to running more experiments. I mean, that's how I run my business, is with always observing what experiments we're running and how they go. Another big thing I'm looking forward to in 2022 is taking a sabbatical. I'm taking an 8, maybe 9 or 10 week sabbatical. And as that gets closer, you might hear more about it. But that is going to be within this year when I'm also talking about having these other intentions, like the financial, the revenue intentions, the different things I want to do with my programs. So that constraint also needs to fit in, having that sabbatical over the summer. All right, so those are my reflections. I would love to know yours and what any of this brings up for you. And like I said, I know there's going to be some pushback from some of you on some of the things I said, and that's totally welcome. And if you want to share with me your own reflections of 2021, I would love to know. And you can email me at info@coachingwithannie.com. And even better, if you want to share a voice memo with me about a reflection you have on your own business in 2021, share it in a voice memo so that I can share it on the pod. I'll be back next time with an interview as our first podcast of 2022.